with what we just said now, would you say that we're ready for AI? Are we ready for AI?
No, Temba, we're not ready for AI. And AI is catching up faster than we are. And I think that's another problem with all these professions, including data professions within the governance and management space. We're very reactive. Before AI got to before ChatGPT was released, for the layman out there, before that was released, we should have already had laws and ethics prescribed and parameters. How should this work?
Greetings and welcome to another exciting episode of the Sales Matter podcast. This is episode 9. My name is Temba. I'm the host and the founder of Sales Matter. Today I'm sitting with Siyabonga Mabuza, who's the founder of Spotted Ingwe Consulting. Greetings.
Hi Temba, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Welcome and thank you for your time. We're really looking forward to learning from you today, especially in this data management governance space. It's a very interesting space to be in, interesting times really. Seeing where business is going when it comes to governance, seeing where the world is going when it comes to data, AI, machine learning, all this innovation that we're heading into. But before we get our hands dirty, please introduce yourself to our audience the best way you know how.
Thanks, Temba. So as Temba said, I'm Siyabonga Mabuza. I'm the founder of Spotted Ingwe Consulting, where we talk or do everything tech, right? From data governance, management, AI. And I've been in the field for 12 years. So when it comes to the subject of data governance, I've gotten my hands dirty and I've worked with all types of companies, big, small, international, multinational, global, local. So Temba, I think you're in good hands and your audience is in good hands.
Lovely. Love that confidence there. I like it. I like it so much. I've had guests, sit with me here and we've talked and delved deeper into data analytics, data science. We've never really touched on the governance piece. Take us through the difference between data analytics and data governance. How do these two relate?
Okay, how the two marry.
Yeah.
Very important. So, as you know, right now everybody has this drive of being a data-driven business, becoming data and digital and digitization. So when you're talking about data governance, right, and data analytics, you can't really do clean and proper analytics without data governance. And what do I mean? For analytics to run, they depend on data. And the whole GIGO, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
So if you don't have clean and good data, which is what data governance is all about, your analytics will also be skewed because they're very heavily dependent on the quality of the data you're using and the integrity of the data you're using in your analytics. So you can kind of say data is like oil in an engine. As much as the analytics will be the engine that gives you the visuals and gives you the information, data is that oil, and without it, or that petrol that actually gets it going. If you've got lower grade petrol, lower grade oil, your car will not perform as it needs to perform. The same goes with data analytics. So that's actually how they marry.
Okay, and then with regards to the governance piece, you've been in this space for about 12 years now. What are you seeing as challenges in most businesses, organizations?
The biggest challenge that I've seen is the lack of executive support and a proper budget. So most people will talk data governance. Oh, I forgot the third one, which is they're not giving it enough time. So data governance, to get data to a point where it needs to be, you need executive support, you need money, where you need to be willing to pour money into it before you can realize it as an asset.
Okay.
And thirdly, time. So most of the time, they just think it's you'll come in a year's time, we'll be there. It's actually a 3-year journey at a minimum.
3-year journey at a minimum.
Yeah.
If not done right, what's the cost?
The cost is your analytics will be very problematic. You will not be getting insights that are credible. So you might be making costly decisions on information that is not credible and that doesn't really support what you say. And you might make decisions that will stray your whole company strategy because of that. Second, the other cost is you can't really participate in the current world or the future of technology, which is all about AI, machine learning. So you're actually working yourself out of a market. That's actually the biggest cost. If you're not using clean data, you are counterproductive and you are working yourself out of your own market, job, etc. So
Okay.
It's counterintuitive.
I want us to take our viewers on this data governance journey, right? Where does it start and end?
Where it starts is with, you know how they say, for you to heal, to acknowledge the problem.
Okay.
It's the same thing. So if you don't see that there's a problem with your data, it becomes very difficult to heal. So the first thing that we do, even if you call us to do your data governance, we need to assess, where are you? What's your current state? What does it look like? Do you know where your data sits? Do you know all the processes that affect your data? Are you aware of all the people that touch your data? It also touches onto security, because governance is quite a wide umbrella. So it starts with awareness. It starts with knowing where your data is, who touches it, the processes that touch it. Then it moves on. So that is also, and there are two concepts, Temba. I don't know if you're going to talk about them, but data management and governance, they're always married. So that's where you need to just, management would be understanding where you are. And then you start introducing the governance. So now you know where your data sits. You need some rules, right, that will protect, that will inform how your people use the data. So that's where you start getting into policies. You need to start writing policies, procedures, guarding documents, governance documents.
Okay.
So that's where step 2 is. Step 3, you need some form of authority and accountability. So you have something called data ownership, data stewardship. So if this set of data is not correct, who do I need to talk to? Who needs to make decisions of the data? And you need accountability at the highest level in your organization. So the ownership needs to sit with the executive. So for example, if you think about a normal structure, operations data, the owner should be the COO, the Chief Operating Officer, because that's the highest decision maker for that data. That person needs to inform the whole structure below him or her what the data is, or how they should treat the data. So then that's ownership. Stewardship talks to the people or the team that will actually ensure that the data complies with the policies you've put in place, that the data is cleaned, that the processes are changed, that the technology is configured correctly. Then lastly, or not lastly actually, you have a governing body. So your owners together, because what we also have a problem is you might have data that other business units or business areas need. So you can't make decisions in isolation without actually hearing your colleagues' views. So it's important to have a governing council, a governing group, which will make collective decisions on the company's data. And then the last thing you need to do, which is very important, is driving that change, driving that culture. So you need to run a change program where you actually tell from your executives right to the person at the door, right to the person that's capturing this information, all the users in the firm need to start respecting data and actually becoming responsible towards data. And now if you do all of that, you'll have a successful data governance program.
Someone might be watching this and say, look, it sounds exciting, but sounds like a costly process, but also tedious. What would you say to that?
Think about it this way, right? The value you'll get at the end, and what most people don't understand, these are upfront costs, right? These are costs you pay once off upfront. At the end, once it becomes clear and mature, if your governance program has been developed correctly, you will realize that investment much sooner. Okay, because it's not a continuous investment. It's heavy upfront as an investment financially, even in time-wise, it's heavy upfront, and then over time you start becoming more competitive because of this.
Yeah.
So if you're saying this is costly, this is tedious, this is quite lengthy, true, but the trade-off is also you actually get more out of it. So the more you invest in your governance upfront, it's like building a house. And if you're building like a 9-10-story building, your foundation becomes heavier, it becomes deeper. You put in more materials. It's the same thing with data governance. If you bypass it, you will feel it, because at some point you will not be able to compete because you don't have the quality of data you need. So it's definitely worth it, and you will realize the benefits sooner. So that's the other misconception there, that, okay, I'll only realize the benefits at the end. No. As you start cleaning your data, you start realizing the benefits. So it's like you get your return on investment almost as you build. It just grows in terms of value as you mature along your journey. But it's almost an instant gratification kind of thing. You get your money back as soon as you start investing.
I get you. And we've learned about this concept of data debt, right? Where we possibly believe that we'll cross the bridge when we get there type of a thing. But what happens then is that you always play catch up. We've learned about these concepts that many a times we think the money we put in now is actually quite a lot compared to, you know, what would put later, but it's actually quite the, you know, the opposite. What we find is that it might seem a little bit expensive to
No.
put in the investment at this stage, right? But it's not compared to now when you have to start fixing. Am I correct in making that point?
You're very correct, Temba. It's like an opportunity cost. You know, in business, they'll tell you, selling this cup of coffee today or selling this water, right? If I don't seize the opportunity now, it'll cost me a couple of years down the line. So what do I mean? If you look at your tech startups, if you look at when they launched and when they didn't launch, what would have been the gap and what would have been the opportunity costs? Okay, so it's the same thing with data. If you don't seize the opportunity now, it will become more expensive down the road to actually fix your data, and you might have made a couple of mistakes because you don't have credible data to make your insights,
100%.
to use your analytics. So if you don't do it now and you procrastinate, you are actually, again, risking to be out of business. Because by the time you catch up, your competitors might have invested in their data governance up front, and now they have a head start over you. They have a boost over you. And you need to go back to basics, and you need to invest the basics, which means you'll halt your engine, almost halt your business to try and catch up, because you can't really go on. And what the other misconception is, I can continue without data governance. I can continue
I wanted
running
to
my
say
business.
the same thing. Yeah.
You honestly can't. You get to a point where you've got your back against the wall. No, you can't really move, because now technology is at the point where we need data. Technology feeds on data. It's the blood. Like, data is the blood of AI, blood of technology. If you don't have blood, if you don't have that fuel, it becomes very difficult to compete. Let me make an example, right? So let's say you're in a sales business where you sell something, you're selling a product, and you need to understand what the market is doing, or how the market is performing, what they like. In today's times, right, if you're not able to do sentimental analytics where you're actually scraping data from Twitter, from Facebook about your products, and if you're not able to go to your systems and actually get insights, how many sales did I get, how many did I make in a day, you will be unable to forecast and plan. Your competitor who's selling a similar product, if they are able to scrap data from your social media platforms, and they are most importantly able to look back and say, how many did we sell? What's our trend over the last 5 years? Which products was taken up the most? You match the two with what's on social media platform. You're starting to understand your people better. And you, the other business A, is not doing that. It means that you will not be able to, your business B will be able to grab a market segment that you are not able to grab, because you're not able to see, right, what they can see through insights. So that's the thing. You risk taking yourself out of business because you're not reading the data. So in a way, data can enable business to be fortune tellers, where they can actually predict the trends of their consumers through data, through credible data. If you ignore the data in-house and you only go for social media data outside, you are missing a very important part, because now you want to compare how am I doing in comparison to the world. And so what do I need to change internally? If you don't have that, what am I doing, then what are you doing? If you can't ask, okay, how have we been performing over the past couple of years, it becomes very difficult to plot the next step for your business.
You know, there's a very important lesson we learned from the Titanic. I don't know if you remember this part. I'm not going to ask you if you've watched the Titanic, because I know everyone did.
Yeah, who hasn't?
There's a valuable lesson which we've learned, you know, from the Titanic. The minute they hit that iceberg, the captain said something very interesting. Do you know what he said?
Mm-mm.
He said there's no way we're going to sink, because the Titanic was made in a way that it will never sink.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So where I'm going with this is that we've got leaders today who say there's no way our business will ever go down. And as such, this data governance, this data space that you're talking about, we can live without it. We continue to be profitable. Right? We continue to service our clients. We continue to see growth in our business. But without realizing that the water is getting in slowly, and it's only a matter of time before that Titanic starts going down. What do you say to such a leader who's got the confidence to say our business is not built to sink? It's not built to go down, no matter what we hit.
If I was on the board, I would recommend that that leader changes or they're out. But to be, jokes aside, right, I love the analogy. And I think probably BlackBerry said the same thing before Apple took over, before the other smartphones. Probably Nokia said the same thing. If you'd reflect, going back, Tim, I remember Nokia and BlackBerry were one of the phones which were like up there for us. Like, if you're a youth at that time, you knew if you had one of those. And what happened? They failed to understand the market. They failed to actually read their own data. And they sank. So back to a Titanic example, what would you say? I'd urge that executive to actually go back to the drawing board and relook at that decision, because that's not true. It's a misconception on their side.
Yeah.
Okay, so they are going to sink if they don't take into consideration data. They are going to sink if they're not taking where technology in the future is going. There's no way you can escape the importance of data governance. You need historical data. You need that historical data to be credible. You are not able to move on if your historical data is not credible, and that's what all data governance is about, ensuring that you can trust your data. So as an executive out there, yes, I agree, your business is doing well. You've got a very good footprint. You've got a very good foundation. However, to move to the next step, to give you that competitive edge, to give you that jump, so building on the very excellent foundation that they've managed to establish, it is important. It's as important as getting oxygen for a business.
100%.
For them to actually take their data important and take it seriously.
What works and what doesn't work when it comes to data governance?
Okay, what works, what doesn't work is a negative culture from executives. So, you know the saying, it rots from the top?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. If the executives are not bought into it and it's just a paper exercise to please some structure, it's not going to work. If you're not driving the culture from root up as well, so it's a bottom up and it's a top down and a bottom up approach, it's not going to work. So what works is the executives need to buy in, right? And it needs to be embedded as well in the company strategy. So it doesn't work if it's not part of a company strategy. What also doesn't work is grouping and lumping data as part of your technology team or your IT team. Data needs to have the same autonomy and independence as your auditing teams or your company governance teams, so you never lump those with other groups. So what doesn't work on, and what I've seen is one of the biggest mistakes, like, data, we don't know where to put it. It's either part of the chief operations team or part of the CIO's team or the chief technologies team. That doesn't work. Data needs to have its own voice. And also what doesn't work is just appointing a head here and there. That person also needs to have access to the board and other executives. So what works is if you appoint a CDO or a chief data officer, it needs to have they need to be supported by the board and have enough authority to actually drive certain change in the organization.
Fight for your seat. I think someone was sitting with me and they were saying the same thing. To say that CDO today really need to fight for their seat, to actually get their voice heard and stuff. So it's quite interesting to hear you say that again. I want to ask you now this following question, because we talked about this quality of the data, right? I want to ask you a question around metrics that businesses can use to measure the effectiveness of its data governance. How do we know whether we are heading into the right direction?
Okay, so one of the thing is, Temba, what it's important for the viewers of this show, for them to understand, is that data is cut into three, right? Or the things that influence data are people, technology, and process.
Okay.
So that's at the heart. So if something is wrong with the data, it's either your people are not doing or not treating data the way they should, or they don't know. They really don't know. Because, for example, when you are registering or when you're completing a form, you're a user, right? If the form says ID number and you don't know what an ID number is, you might put your company or your car registration number in there. You, the user. So now if I'm trying to get insights from that data, I want to know how many people have come, and I want to use the ID number to get other information. If I see a car registration number in there, I can't use your record anymore. I can't perform analytics on your record. So I, as the user, have influenced the quality of the data. So that's the importance of the user. The next thing that affects data is process. So if the process to get that information from you, so I still need an ID number for you, or I need your name and your surname, and you give me a color instead of a name and your surname, the process to get that information, the process would be, I need to explain to you why I need this information. I need to tell you what a name is, what an ID number is. That's the process, right? And how I gather it, and even that form, which systems are they linked to in the back end. The process to send that information, is it sent today, is it sent the next day? Those are all processes, very important. The last thing is the technology itself. If I need an ID number and a first name and a last name from you, but my form doesn't have a field for that. Okay, now the technology issue. So when you're talking about KPIs, right, the importance of KPIs are they are tangible or qualitative and not quantitative measures. So one of the quantitative measures of data is good quality. So using this analogy of a form, if in the field of if I'm getting, so now I've got a flat file with all this information. If I get a first name under the column called first name, if I get a name under the column, surname under the column called surname, it means then that's successful. So those are one of the measures you can perform qualitative measures. I'm looking for this, am I getting this? So you'll put in a couple of rules to test that. One of the quantitative measures would be culture. Okay, so how much effort do I need to put in for you to do what you need to do? So if now, when we began with our data governance program, people were capturing everything everywhere. I was putting my car registration number in an ID field, first name would be a color. Now, 6 months down the line, I'm seeing actually we're getting all the fields where we need to be. That's success, because now the culture is changing. So now that's actually success of mine. So that's another KPI, another means to measure success.
Yes.
Okay.
I get
And
you.
now when you start actually, so when we look at our programs like your analytics, etc., that's using data in there, the minute you start getting results that are true, that's where you start seeing the success. So wrapping up, right? The key ones would be quantitative, where you are actually like for like. I'm looking for an ID, I'm getting an ID. I'm looking for a first name, I'm getting a first name. Easiest thing to measure. Then you also go to culture. Are my people doing what they need to do? So that's actually, that one takes time. You measure it, and you need to actually put a peg in the ground to say, I'm going to start measuring this from this day, so you can start reflecting and going back. Do you have policies and processes? Are people adhering? Those are all qualitative measures which are very important in your governance program.
Then the following question that I want to ask you is, for us to then influence this change management, right? Influence this culture of data governance. Is it a matter of literacy? What are the ways in which we can start, inspiring, motivating people to be more data head, if I can put it like that?
Data savvy. I agree. So for any change program to work, and some of the most effective change programs I've seen within the scope of data or not, are programs that are in your face. It's like an advert on TV for a product that's in your face. It's hard to forget, right? Because it's constantly here, like you constantly see it.
Okay.
So literacy is very important. Most of us data professionals make the mistake of using a lot of jargon. So the most important thing when you're driving your literacy program, use normal day English. Don't come with a lot of terms, because this is how things get lost. If I come to you with a complicated term, complicated concept, I'm driving literacy, that literacy is not going to be effective because I've used a whole lot of jargon you don't understand. So keep it simple, keep it clean, keep it very basic, everyday English.
Okay.
Secondly, you need to run campaigns. Back to my first point, where it might be, if there's company branded cups, company branded water, have a tagline about data. You're constantly in the person's face. Running literacy programs, so in the form of e-learning, you can actually do that once a year. What I like to recommend is every single year, just to drive that responsibility towards data, have like an annual refresher on key important data topics
Okay.
within your firm. So it's
Okay.
like once a year, it's part of your mandatory learning, and at the end the person needs to sign like an attestation to say, I've done this, I understand it. That's also very important. But regularly, like I've been saying, be in their face. So your screensaver, have something like, have a month where you're just driving data awareness. Have newsletter. In your newsletter, have a segment dedicated to data, where every single day you could be teaching them a different concept about data. So I don't like this notion that you need to just do a once-off big bang and run away and disappear.
Okay.
People will forget about you. Hence, I say you need to be in their face. So be around. When they look around, they need to understand and feel comfortable, because it's foreign. When you get a new term, you're like, I don't understand this. It's only natural human behavior to shy away from it. But the more it becomes familiar, the more you're surrounded by it, it starts becoming second nature. Where now you're data savvy, where if you have a screensaver, did you lock your laptop when you're moving away? Are you aware that you're not supposed to share your data without consent? Are you aware when you're capturing data, you need to read the
Reminding
labels?
the people.
You keep on reminding
You
the
keep
people.
on reminding your people.
So it's important for you to keep reminding the people so they can start living it. It can't be a once-off exercise that you put away in the shelf and forget about it.
Okay, and then when it comes to ethics, let's talk about, the ethical consideration when it comes to data governance. What are the top 3 things that people should keep in mind at all times?
Oh, that's very important. So before we even go to the top 3, right?
Yeah.
Ethics in 2024, in our days moving forward, it's the core of data governance. So now you're starting to see a shift where predominantly data governance was centered around the quality of the data. We're still there. That will never change. But now quality needs to be matched with ethics, especially now that we have access to more intelligent tools like artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc.
Yes.
So at the core, right? So the importance of ethics comes from now you have access to clean data and you have access to powerful tools. You can literally create anything you want to create. It could be ethical, it could be unethical. Hence, now the role of data governance practitioners is to drive the ethics. So what are ethics? So when you build using data or use data, use it in an ethical way. So don't do something that will harm others. Don't do something that will cause reputational damage to your firm or to yourself or to your seniors. And don't use, if you have access to data that you shouldn't have access to don't use it. Raise the flag. Go to your structures that we need to talk to and engage to. And the thing is with the ethics battle, it's at a back foot in the sense that we are leaning on your conscience, on your integrity. So that's what ethics is all about. We're leaning on we're using firm tools or company tools like disciplines, policy, as something to assist us, right? But it's more a stick. And at the core of it, we're reaching out to people on their humanity, on their own integrity to actually do the right thing. And this is where I see, Temba, a gap where we need more than just reliance on you as an individual to actually do the right thing. We actually need to start building structures and start thinking about structures or algorithms that can actually help us track that you are ethical. And this is where now, even within data governance, we need to start developing tools to actually help us track that you're doing things ethically. So what do I mean, right? So you know how frameworks, firewalls have been there for a long time within IT. I think when IT started, they were like, okay, here's the internet, here's servers, you can go and connect to this area. But it became an issue if there was no firewalls, there were no security guardrails, right, where people can connect to the dark web and start putting in information and exposing the company also to things that could potentially harm the company. It's the same thing we're doing now. So I think this is where we should move up and keep up as data governance professionals, where we should also build our own ethical firewalls to say you can't build or you can't use data beyond this point. And this is the technology we're putting in place to actually keep those glass perimeters, or keep you within those glass perimeters. Because at the moment, we are appealing to the human or to your humanity. We should actually start putting in guardrails.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, a question around how do we make this practical, right? And I know this is what you guys do at Spotted Ingwe Consulting, and possibly charge millions and millions for it.
Not yet.
But that strategy, how should it look like? That data governance strategy, how does it look like? How should it look like? Let's say in our own business, Sell Smarter, right? We're looking to then either get on the journey or enhance what we already have. What should the strategy,
What are the core pillars of the
what? Yeah,
strategy?
100%.
Okay.
What are the core pillars, but also what are the questions that we should be asking in terms of in developing this strategy?
First important question is, do I know where my data is? Okay. Do I know what value I can get from my data? Because a strategy, it talks about today and it's also forward looking, right? A strategy is supposed to be that elevates you. It's supposed to push the company to perform and get to a next point. That's why you have goals that you set, right? You've got a vision in there. So it's important to understand this is where I am now. Here I am now. So strategy should have understanding the basics where you are now. Secondly, in the strategy, you need to have people, right? Right people appointed to actually drive that strategy. Okay, so those are pillars around, or those are supporting structures around the strategy. In the strategy itself, you should have data ethics, very important. So you need to strategize on how you want your company to look, on what is ethical for you, what is unethical for you, how are we going to deal with unethical situations, what's our tolerance. So ethics is key. Data quality is key to data strategy. So what do I need to get to a point where my data is of the acceptable quality for use? Okay. 3, in any data strategy, you also need credible insights. So
Okay.
it's always matched. That's why you'll find CDA, or data and analytics. So how can I play this back? How can I prove value of my good quality of data? So you also need an analytics pillar in there. So I think those are the fourth one is communication culture. So
Okay.
culture talks to communication. So culture is big. So culture, it's where you might invest some money as well, but you really will reap the benefits. So culture also should be part of the conversations you're having from a strategic level. So I think those 4, then you should be able to move on.
When you say credible insights, what are you referring to?
So am I able to use the data to inform my decision?
Okay.
So am I able to know, okay, I'm a sales executive, I need to drive profitability and I need to gain a new market share. Is my data helping me? Can I make the decision with the data that I have? So if I need to know if there's a new market segment out there, so there's younger generation, I need to know what they like so I can sell a product that's more suited for them. Can I use my data to actually, or when I read my data, is it giving me all the information that I need to profile this new market segment? Now that's credible. If I'm getting data and it's just giving me information that I'm not going to be able to use, that's not credible insights. It's insights, but can't really yield revenue from that.
Okay. One can easily mistake this conversation for only private sector, but I personally believe there's an element of public sector in this whole thing.
Yeah.
What is your advice for government?
Sure. They can do a lot with data. They've got lots of data.
Yeah.
So if there's one entity or entities that have lots of data, it's government. We could save a lot of money as a country if we use our data right. So, they're right in the center of this. They could monetize their data responsibly. And monetize, I mean sell their data to organizations so that they can get credible insights.
100%.
So there's a lot that government can gain. They could, for example, when it comes to them getting their revenue back, like your tax returns, like your tickets, speeding fines, etc., if they're using data, they'll know more. Even people paying their rates and taxes. If government was using data, they could they could reach us faster in terms of maintenance as well, in terms of
100%.
the problems we're facing as a country. If they just invested in cleaning their data, I mean, think about it. If you knew the life of a power plant, if you knew the life of a live line with electricity current, you're like, okay, we installed this in 1998. The shelf life of this product, of this live line, is like 15 years. We are fast approaching the 5 years.
Yes,
and now
yes.
that starts kicking off your procurement processes. You've got a list of suppliers there. That's all data. I mean, and also that reduce their workforce. That create more jobs in the sense that now you'll have people who are managing this data. But you don't need so many people to tell you information you can get at the tip of your hand. So that work much faster. I think it's in the governments as well as the people of the country to actually start using data. So yeah, this conversation is definitely for them. So many inefficiencies, even in terms of fraud, So you start having detectors in your systems where you might be struggling, or government might be struggling with ghost employees, or procurement that's very exorbitant, suppliers that are rogue. If you had systems at your fingertips, you'd be able to detect that fraud upfront. You'd be able to detect certain activities. So if you're struggling with ghost employees, you could actually track certain key metrics, to say, when did this last person log in or come into the office? When did the laptop get opened? So now you can see if this is actually a real employee,
Yes,
and are they
yes.
doing real employee things, or is this a fictitious employee? Just through the system, you don't need to go to an audit and count the number of people in the building. The technology can do that for you, and you can easily eradicate that and start streamlining their process. So government has a lot to gain from using data. So do we, because we are the stakeholders and the primary stakeholders.
How
of
much
government.
is this situation of ghost employees costing government? Do you know? Have you got a figure in mind?
How much is that?
This ghost employees situation costing government?
No, I don't have a figure in mind.
Okay, I'm just curious now that you've mentioned it.
It's here.
Because I know also because I started my career in government, by the way. When I finished university, I worked for State SA.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I know I could hear one or two cases of whether this person really exists or not.
It does
And-
exist, but we can find it out.
Yeah. It will be interesting really to tap into that, just to understand what are the numbers behind that specific situation. Then we're almost at the end. We're almost there. So just hang in there. I want us to talk in the next piece about governance in AI.
Okay.
What does that look like? Because you've been talking about the ethical consideration of of data and stuff, but let's bring AI into the mix, where suddenly it's not a term who's behind whatever that needs to be done. It's possibly an algorithm, machines, all those type of things. How do we then still ensure that governance when it comes to generative AI?
Okay. So let's start from the basics, right? What is AI? Okay. Before we even get to data and governance in there. So AI, right, is basically code that has been developed over time, okay, using lots of data to give you information based on your prompts. So what do I mean? If you think of the likes of ChatGPT, right, ChatGPT is smart only because let's say in 2002, Temba developed this algorithm. But in 2002, okay, Temba told this algorithm, fetch data if. So go get me information about people in Alaska, right? Eskimos. Now, the algorithm couldn't return anything in 2002 because, guess what, Temba? There was no data about people in Alaska in 2002. There was no documentary that talks about, this is Alaska, this is the life in Alaska. So now that algorithm couldn't be used in 2002. Now we come to 2010, Bonga starts working on that algorithm. Still, the algorithm returns information that's actually partial, but at least there's some information based on the number of documentaries that have been made or number of feeds that have been made. But in 2010, yes, Facebook was alive. I think Instagram was just starting. Twitter was there, but we didn't have as many social media platforms, which helped generate data and have accelerated the journey of data. I'm going to come to governance now.
Okay.
So now you get to 2022. You get to 2022, Temba remembers his algorithm, goes back and is like, fetch me data about people in Alaska. He doesn't only get what to know about Alaska, what it is, which is all the National Geographic information you got back then, and that's it. Now you get to go into the everyday life of a teenager living in Alaska. because of the information or the data you find in Twitter, social media platforms. So now you can form profiles. And that child or that teenager is also generous enough to give you information about their grandma. So now you start to form the whole lineage and you start understanding this is Alaska. You start getting a proper picture. So where am I going with this, right? So AI is only as strong as its data. So now, in 2002, the algorithm was there, didn't yield much results, so it was useless.
Yeah.
Now in 2010, if I'm a marketing person and I want to sell new types of winter wear for people in Alaska, guess what? This AI algorithm developed in 2002 rather, now is giving me that information firsthand. So now I can sell winter wear, which I couldn't sell because the data is there.
Yeah.
And now it's governance. So now if Temba, when he was building this algorithm, coded information that's not right? So he actually, he called this program People Understanding the People of Alaska, only to find that he went to sub-Saharan Africa and is gathering information from Morocco instead of Alaska. I want to sell apparel. I want to sell clothing to people in Alaska. The feeds that I'm getting are of people in a very hot country called Africa. And the people, they practice a different religion. And they use, like, their daily lives are very different. So now when I buy this algorithm as a person who wants to make clothing apparel, in my head I was thinking, okay, I wanted to make winter wear, but now I'm getting like fresh, hot summer wear. So now I've got this algorithm that will skew my product. So now what has been unethical here is Temba in his coding, because he gave you information that's incorrect.
Yeah.
So now this is where we start getting into governance, and this is where we start getting into the importance of ethics. So now, whereas before we are reliant on, really didn't rely on our developers, right? Because developers developed based on a product or developed based on a need. I need you to develop code for the system, right? I want to capture human resources or human or people information. Now, literally, I'm getting out of the box technology that can give me anything I want. If your developer is unethical, the results you're going to get are going to be skewed, and that might cause you to do things you don't want to do. So this is when now it starts becoming important. In terms of governance, governance prescribes, right? Governance sets the guardrails. So governance can actually prescribe when you have a bunch of developers in your firm, to which sites can you go, where. So now it starts putting the parameters to say, okay, when you do develop products for us which use these language, artificial intelligence, machine learning, avoid these sites, they're dangerous sites. Avoid going into this internet. So that's where now data governance comes in, where you're saying you can use data, but don't use data from a site called Y, because we don't trust the data. It comes with a lot of. So that's where the important thing is. So now we're starting to go to what we spoke about earlier. We're starting to embed ethics, not only by trusting your people, which you should, but also by supporting them, by giving them guardrails to say, okay, you can play within the space. Beyond this, it's not territory we endorse as a firm or as a company.
Okay. With what you've just said right now, would you say that we're ready for AI? Are we ready for AI?
No, Temba, we're not ready for AI. And AI is catching up faster than we are. And I think that's another problem with all these professions, including data professions within the governance and management space. We're very reactive. Before AI got to before ChatGPT was released, for the layman out there, before that was released, we should have already had laws and ethics prescribed and parameters. How should this work? So technology, it from the way I see it, right, developers and coders, right, they are usually ahead, and they drop this can of worms. Then we are always reactive and trying to catch up. That's where we are. So no, are we ready? No. Can you stop it? No. What we need to do now is fasten our pace. So we need to now move with haste in terms of catching up and leading. So this is where futurism and data governance needs to work hand in hand. Where now we need to start not only predicting the trends for AI, predicting the trends for data governance. So where would you be by this point in time? And we need to start chasing that. as governance. This is what governance looks like in 2030. This is what governance looks like in 2040.
I love that.
This is where we need to be as governance professionals, because we have been thinking of ourselves as reactive. You first have a firm, you generate data, then you bring us in. No. We should be, hi, I'm opening a company, I'm going to sell product Y. When you say that, we should already be in those conversations. Where we'll say, you want us to say product Y, you will need to generate data. This is how you need to structure it. These are the ethical consideration or the governance considerations you should have over a period of time. This is your investment. This is how it's going to grow. First 6 months, this is what you should have. Once you start generating data of so many megabytes, this is what you should have. We should be in the front, not at the back, because if we don't, we'll start getting into trouble, because these new tools like your AI and machine learning is very powerful.
Someone said, when a company is going through the first budgets they cut is marketing, right? Because marketing is perceived as a feel like, if I can put it like that, we feel like we should be doing this type of a thing. Am I correct in saying that possibly some business out there are treating data governance as that?
Data, yeah.
Like we feel like we should be talking about this governance thing, we should be doing this governance thing and stuff, as if it's not compulsory.
True. So it's a common problem. Even the ones that have adopted data programs, the minute you start talking to them and like, okay, I need this much money in investment and this is what you're going to do. You've got your whole accounting correctly. You've got your mathematics right. You get that a lot. It feels like they're doing us a favor by giving you money. It feels like you're just that line item there that's optional. Like, okay, I've got extra. You can give it to those, And it's true. It's a real big problem within the data space where executives, company leaders have not realized the importance of data governance, have not realized the importance of data. And to paint a picture, Temba, your Silicon Valley companies, your Facebooks, your Googles, whatever, no, their only competitive advantage is data. These are companies. So with Google, when Google started, it was a search engine, didn't have much. It started driving people to create pages or web pages, started driving the creation of data domains and opening it to everyone. Because from day one, they understood that for my product to work, I need data, right? Google is one of the biggest sellers of data out there, okay? They give some, they give some for free, they sell some. So, and if you look at all the companies out there, they're doing better than your companies that are selling products like your Nestle's or selling like things that you need to buy, because they are data driven. Their whole strategy is data with strong governance. And if you want to compete, or not even compete with them, but be counted amongst the top leaders or the top companies, you need to start thinking data governance and data right at the center of your strategy, not reactive. And this is the biggest problem that executives make and company leaders, decision makers make. They think of data as a by the way, like, oh, okay, I need to do that because you said it earlier. I've been doing this for 200 years. We've been surviving. We've survived so many depressions. Why now? Not understanding that and that argument is flawed in the sense that in 2004, when Mark Zuckerberg started with, I think it was FacePage, he was a nobody, right? When Jeff Bezos started Amazon, I remember Kindle. My first Kindle was very light, right, compared to what you have now. It was Kindle Light. So Kindle Light, excuse the pun, but it was very light. And if you're a business leader and looking at these two men or gentlemen with their companies now, they've probably surpassed you, like they've probably overtaken you because of just their use of data and having good governance for their data. So you need to be intentional. That's the other thing. Executives are not intentional when it comes to data governance. It's a program. It's a tick box exercise. Okay, this is where the trends are, so let's do it. As an executive, a CEOs needs to be the best friends of CDOs, because you need to be intentional about your data, intentional about what do I want from my data, and that also translates into your data governance program. The minute you can say, what do I want from my data, that will actually translate into how do you want to implement your governance. Because you don't want your governance to be a stumbling block. You still want to access your data even though you've got policies, even though you've got a governance program, because governance in its very nature, it's like it creates parameters, it creates boundaries which you should not cross. That's what governance traditionally is. Whether it's in data, whether it's in your compliance team, that's what governance is. It means you need to just stop. You can play within this space. Beyond that, it becomes ground that's not trusted. So you need to be intentional as an executive. You need to be intentional as a leader.
Be intentional as a leader. Be intentional as a business. I love that point. I want to give you an opportunity to say your final words.
Are we there?
What suggestions, can you give businesses to improve on the governance? You can look at this camera. This is now you saying your goodbye to our viewers.
Okay. Sad to say goodbye. I was really enjoying this conversation. But yeah, so if you're a business leader out there, if you are running a corporate or a company, it's important for you, as we've said, to be intentional about your data. Ask yourself, what will data do for me? Why do I need data? Where do I want to be with data? And that will inform your governance program, and that will help you see the value in data governance rather than it being a tick box exercise just for some form of compliance. It's important for you to actually invest in the governance program that you need. It's important for you to see where your competitive advantage lies when it comes to data, and also driving the right company culture. You need to be very intentional in thinking about, what do I want? What do I want my people to be? Or how my team, my entire organization, how do I need it to support me in our governance journey? So be inclusive as well, because if you're not inclusive and including your everyday user, your everyday company user, your governance program will be skewed. Thirdly, in terms of insights, right? What do I want to see? If I open my iPad in the morning or my phone, I would like certain reports to be delivered to me. How would I like those reports to boost my performance as an organization? So invest in a good data strategy, invest and empower your chief data officers, empower your data leaders, and have them in the conversation, not only when you're trying to fix data, but also when you are building that strategy. Because to be honest, if you as a leader are not using your data right now, that will be your stumbling block. So it's best that you start embracing your data and embracing all the nuances and fixes you need to put in there to actually get credible insights for your data. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's Siyabonga Mabuza, founder of Spotted Ingwe Consulting. Hoping you found value in this episode. We look forward to bringing you more insights. So be on the lookout for episode 10. And that's it for now. Cheers.